Okay, welcome everyone to ANC3 virtual meeting over Zoom. This is the second or the fourth Monday of June, our regular meeting time. I'm Randy Speck. I'm chair of ANC3 and I represent the single member district that is ANC3 That's basically the area between Nebraska and Nevada and Broad Branch. We'll begin tonight by introducing all the other commissioners. Jerry, you want to introduce yourself next?
Hi, I'm Jerry Mallett's Commissioner 3G05. That's bounded pretty much by Chevy Chase Circle, down Connecticut to Military and across over to Broad Branch.
Chris?
I'm Chris Fromboliti, 3G07, the area bounded by Military, Reno, Nebraska, and Nevada.
Dan?
Good evening, everybody. Dan Bradfield. I represent 3G06, which is Chevy Chase Circle on the western side over to 41st down to Military.
And Becky?
Yes, hello everybody. I'm Rebecca Madak. I'm 34G04. I have Lafayette Elementary School and Park in my single member district. I go from Broad Branch to about Tennyson, to Utah, to Nebraska, up Morrison, back to Broad Branch.
Okay, thank you everyone. We have a quorum. We have 5 commissioners.
Randy,
Yeah.
Shonda's on, but she's on as an attendee. So I'm going to allow her to talk so she can introduce herself.
Okay. Shanda? Shanda, you're muted. You might want to check your mute.
Oh, sorry. Hi, thank you, everyone. Having technical difficulty. I'm Shanda Tuck Garfield, and I represent ANC3 the part of the district that's from Utah Avenue to Oregon. Thank you.
Okay. We've got 6 commissioners then. So thank you, Shanda, for checking in with us. Okay, this is the 4th virtual meeting that we've held. Again, it's being conducted on Zoom. We're going to be careful to get everyone involved in the meeting to the extent that we can. If you have any questions or comments that you want to make, if you'll put them in the Q&A function, then Commissioner Mallett, who is going to be co-hosting tonight, will be able to recognize you and let you be unmuted and speak. But don't hesitate to do that if you have something that you'd like to contribute and add to the discussion. We're not using the chat function tonight, however, so there's no need to put anything into the chat function. The meeting is being recorded, as all of our meetings are recorded, and they will be posted on our YouTube channel probably tomorrow morning, assuming all the technology goes as expected. The first item of business is to adopt the agenda. The agenda that was posted on our website and on various listservs around the community. And are there any modifications or changes anyone wants to make to the agenda? Jerry?
There was just a question from somebody that wanted to see what the agenda was. Could you just briefly indicate what's going to be on the agenda? Sure.
In brief, after the general announcements that we usually make, we're going to have a report on the coronavirus emergency impacts and the available resources that Commissioner Mallett has been giving us each week. Then we'll have a discussion on the possible approval of a grant application for a project that's related to COVID-19 relief. Then we'll have a discussion of the task force on racism that we established at our last meeting. And finally, we'll have a discussion of possible transportation issues for reopening schools in the fall, including the possible designation of slow streets. Those are the primary topics that we'll be discussing in basically that order. Okay, is there any modification or change to the agenda, the draft agenda? Okay, all those in favor of adopting the agenda, say aye.
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 Aye. Okay, that's all 6 of us. So the agenda is adopted. I have a few announcements. The first is with regard to the November general election. At our last meeting, the commission adopted a resolution describing problems that had been experienced in the June 2nd primary election. And we urged the Board of Elections and the council to send email ballots to all registered voters for the general election in November. Sounds like we're getting some background noise from someone. If you could mute yourself. Got it. Thank you, Chris. On June 17th, the board reviewed its experience from the primary election. There have been a lot of complaints by a lot of people all over the city. And they agreed to propose a modification for the November election. Rather than sending out applications for a ballot so that a voter would have to send the application back in and then get the ballot at a later point, they're just going to send, they propose to send ballots to every voter in DC. And that's exactly what our commission had recommended in our resolution. They've also proposed to have 40 in-person voting centers instead of the 20 that were used in the primary, to hire more staff for the general election, which is obviously needed given the long lines that were at all of the polling stations. They've also agreed to, or proposed to heavily message to voters about the voting locations and the early voting. They're at least planning some steps that could have an impact and make the voting easier in November than it was in the June primary. There was also a council hearing before the Committee on the Judiciary and Public Safety, the roundtable hearing on June 18th. And they had about 45 witnesses that testified. Interestingly, there were witnesses from a lot of other jurisdictions, the voting officials in other jurisdictions who were describing the problems that they'd had and the difficulties of implementing a mail-in ballot system on short notice. The council and the Board of Elections then are going to work on implementing these procedures that I think the Board of Elections has proposed, so that there will be a much greater emphasis on mail-in ballots in the November election than there was even on this election, the June election. The second announcement I have is with regard to ANC candidates. On June 26th, that's this Friday, ANC candidates, anyone who wants to run as a commissioner, may begin the process of getting on the November 3rd general election ballot. To qualify, candidates must be a registered voter and they must live in their single member district for at least 60 days. The candidate must also get a petition, get signatures on a petition by at least 10 registered voters in their SMD. In past years, that requirement has been 25, but because of the pandemic, it has been reduced to just 10. And in addition, those signatures can be obtained electronically by email. The procedures have not been finalized at the Board of Elections, and I've been asking them almost daily for more specificity about exactly how that's going to occur. But certainly by Friday, I think they will be giving a lot more instructions on how candidates who want to run for the ANC can do so. There's a website that we'll have in our minutes where you can get more information as the board updates its information for ANCs. And finally, there's a conversation with the Metropolitan Police Commander Bedlion, he's the 2nd District Commander. And it will be an online conversation with him tomorrow evening at 7 o'clock. And the commander plans to discuss recent events and to answer residents' questions. And you can register for this online event by emailing ssbapartment@aol.com. If anyone needs that just let us know in the Q&A and I'll repeat it again. Okay, other commissioners have announcements. We'll begin with Commissioner Mallett.
I have no announcements. There were a couple of questions regarding your announcements that
Okay.
one was somebody had a question about the mail-in voting, and what if you show up at the poll after you've already mailed in a ballot?
Well, I don't know how they're going to accommodate that, but I am sure that they will be checking those kinds of things. There will be checks to assure that there's not any fraud or anyone can vote twice. I'm not sure how they're going to do it. They haven't specified that yet. We're still at the early stages of that planning, so I don't know. We'll have to find out from the Board of Elections how they're going to address an issue like that.
I have no other announcements.
Okay, Chris,
No announcements.
Dan,
No announcements.
Shanda?
Yes, can everyone hear me?
Yes, quite well.
Yes, I wanted to announce that you mentioned in terms of the next term for commissioners that I will not be seeking re-election. However, I have enjoyed the time that I have served in the 6 years and working with my fellow commissioners, especially everyone who, my former commissioner, Gary Thompson, who encouraged me to run, as well as Chairman Speck. And I thank all of my fellow commissioners who worked with me over the years. But I think just as far as the changes in my family and the length of time, it is best to have another great resident of my neighborhood represent my ANC. So with that, I am encouraging our residents who have been very active on issues such as Oregon Avenue and working with the Knollwood community, as well as St. John's College High School. I encourage residents who may be interested to either contact me or my fellow commissioners if they're interested in running to find out about our duties and obligations. And I would say that working with my fellow commissioners has been wonderful. You've always been helpful. Whenever I did not have an answer or didn't know how to proceed, you were all very helpful. And I'd especially like to thank former Commissioner Beach for helping me learn the job of treasurer, as well as our office managers, Stephanie Van Pelt and yes, and everyone who's at the community center. So with that, I just wanted to announce that.
Well, thank you, Shanda. We've also enjoyed working with you over the last, it's 4 years, right? Or 6 years? 4 years or 6 years?
6 years. Time has flown by.
Time flies, yes. Okay, Becky, you have any announcements?
No, I don't.
Okay, anyone in the community have announcements? If you could note them in the Q&A. Jerry?
There's one, Denise Senecal, representing PEPCO, has an announcement, so I'm going to allow her to.
Okay.
Now, Denise, unmute yourself and you can make your announcement.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So what I'd like to do is just share some information about the Reduce Energy Use DC contest that's being held in July. It's a united effort among more than 20 environmental, business, and community groups to educate DC residents on ways to use energy more efficiently. And so this initiative, Reduce Energy Use DC, will ask DC residents to take a pledge, and those who sign up can get tips on ways to save energy and enter a drawing to win $300 on your PEPCO electric bill. So to learn more about this, you can go to reduceenergyusedc.com and sign up.
Okay, thank you, Denise.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, we'll move on to our substantive agenda. Jerry, you want to begin with the update on the coronavirus emergency?
Sure, and I'll try to keep this short. I know everybody reads enough about this all the time that they're a bit familiar. So I think we're into week 16 or 17. Seems like forever, but it really isn't. And as you know, we seem to be doing an excellent job here in DC. Our average 5-day rolling average here for positive testing is about 42 over that 5-day period. We've been between 19 and 49 over the last week. So we're really making a lot of progress in that case. The number of patients, COVID-19 patients in DC hospitals is down to 155, which still sounds like a lot, but it's much lower than it has been. And the number in ICU is down to 50, which is by far the lowest it's been in 3 months. So we're making progress, and unfortunately, we still have, our people are still dying from this in DC, so it's not to be taken lightly at all, even though we're ready to go into phase 2. As the mayor indicated, even though we're reopening into phase 2, doesn't mean that the social distancing practices are to be ignored. Still with face masks, social distancing, and the other things that I think have enabled Washington, D.C. to do so much better than other parts of the country. We are now also up to 9.1% of DC's total population has been tested, and that too is much improved over what it was even the last time we met. So the more people that get tested, and like some people say, the better off we are in how we're able to fight this disease. So all is good on that front in terms of our improvement. In terms of the neighborhoods, the number of tests have been increasing in our neighborhoods as well. Barnaby Woods, the geographic boundaries are a little fuzzy in how they're broken down, but the 3 that are mostly in our neighborhood, our ANC, is Barnaby Woods, Chevy Chase, and Forest Hills, because some of the Forest Hill geographic boundaries really go into our ANC in terms of the map that they're using. And so in our neighborhood as well, a lot more people are being tested, and that too is a good sign. So that's where we are in terms of testing, in terms of the impact right now. And as I said, we have moved into phase 2, started this morning. And as of right now, the restaurants, for instance, in our area, they're allowed to be open inside. Almost all of them are open except for Macon, which I understand they're shooting for sometime around July 1 to reopen, which is great news. So that would mean that all of our restaurants are either open already or in the process of reopening. There are a couple of stores that are closing in our area, but neither one of them is COVID-19 related because they were planned to close all along. Catch Can is empty now. They're still doing some mail order stuff, but the physical store is empty. And I believe this is the last week that Periwinkle will have a physical presence in our neighborhood. But otherwise, nail salons are back opening with restrictions, and hopefully we'll be able to get the few remaining businesses that are still closed up and running sometime soon. That includes the Avalon, which will have to maintain requirement to keep it under 50 people, but still better than what it was beforehand. So that's pretty much an update on what's going on. So up to this point, it looks like the business community has managed to stay afloat. As I reported last time, over 20 of them received small business micro grants, which was great news. Many of them received the PPP loan, which could become a grant from the federal government. So that help and the continued support from our neighborhood has enabled them to keep on the positive side of the COVID-19 virus.
Okay, I see, Jerry, we've got a couple of questions, but I think we can leave those for a little bit later. They don't relate specifically to your presentation. But we will get to those questions. Let's make sure we don't forget them. Okay, the next topic on our agenda is the discussion of possible vote on application for grants related to the COVID-19 relief. Commissioner Clayman was handling this, but in his absence, I'll try to do it myself. At our last meeting, we indicated we had received a grant application for $2,000 from the Ward 3 Mutual Aid Network for providing groceries and deliveries and other essential needs to residents in Ward 3. And then they, as a result of our discussion at our last meeting, they expanded it to also include Ward 4 west of Rock Creek Park. We had a presentation from Peter Lynch, who was representing the network, and the commission agreed to request that residents or organizations submit any other grant applications by June 18th so that we could consider them at this meeting as well. And we did not receive any grant applications during that time, any other grant applications. Now, I did, out of an abundance of caution, we've had some concerns in the past where we've approved grant applications and then they were disapproved by the Office of the Advisory Neighborhood Commission. So I ran this application by Gottlieb Simon, who is the director of the OANC. And he raised two questions about the application, and we ought to give the applicant an opportunity to address them this evening. I've alerted them to these two questions. The first is they asked for more specificity in the application about exactly how the grants are going to be used, how they're going to be spent. Are they going to pay for groceries? Are they going to pay for gas for the deliveries? What other costs, what specific things are going to be paid for by this grant? And the second question was that the ANCs can't make grants to individuals. They can only make grants to organizations. And Mr. Simon had heard from other ANCs that there was some question as to whether there was an actual entity, an organization to whom we could give this grant. And so Sarah Swertzoff, I believe, is in our meeting tonight, and maybe she can answer those two questions before we just have a further discussion and then a possible vote on this application. Sarah, are you there? Jerry, can you recognize her? You're muted, Jerry.
I'm looking for her name on this list. There she is. Okay.
All right, good evening, everyone, and thank you for having me as a guest at your meeting. Is my audio clear now?
Yes, very good.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for considering Peter's application on behalf of the Ward 3 team. So we're just one of 7 teams across the city, and we're affiliated with each other as the DC Mutual Aid Network. Each ward sort of scrambled to come up with its own fundraising apparatus as COVID hit the city. And we currently use the bank account in my name because we did not have fiscal sponsorship or any organizational affiliation when we started up in Ward 3. So I opened a bank account specifically for the purpose of Ward 3 Mutual Aid, and it's through that bank account that we make reimbursements via PayPal, Cash App, and Venmo. We only spend the funds on groceries and hygiene products and household cleaning, household items like cleaning products. No funds are spent on gas or printing flyers. All of those types of costs are basically covered by the volunteers who work with the network. So yeah, we really try to put, every penny towards those needed supplies and groceries and occasionally PPE like gloves and disinfectant and masks used by volunteers, but most of those things have been donated as well. It was not really, I think, any of our intention to have these fundraisers run off of a personal bank account like my own, which is linked to our GoFundMe fundraiser. It was sort of the situation that we didn't see any organizations doing this work, and we didn't see the city doing the work, and there was a really urgent need to spring into action, and this was the way that we were able to do it. And since then, we have looked into ways to become some kind of incorporated entity. We looked into fiscal sponsorship through the Open Collective, but they take 5% fees. So we have been in an ongoing conversation about how we could lower the fees or have a kind of guaranteed no fees arrangement over a certain period of time. And this coming Friday, we have a network-wide meeting on co-op structures, and that will be led by someone from the cooperative incubator at Luther Place Church. So that's another option that we're looking at. And I just wanted to let you all know that ANC3D did give us a grant to the Ward 3 Mutual Aid team, and they gave it in the form of a check made out to me, which I deposited in our bank account and which we are now using for groceries and hygiene products. So I'm not sure if that contradicts the information that you got from the director at the OANC, or whether it's technicality in terms of like the organization versus the bank account. So that's, I think, all the information that you requested.
Thank you, Sarah. The problem is that the director of the OANC has been very, very technical about all of these issues related to grants. And if we made a grant, to whom would we make out the check? Because we would have to pay it by check.
Well, if you did what ANC3D did, you would write the check to me, and then I would deposit it in the bank account we use to reimburse all of our volunteers for grocery runs. If you made out the check to us in a week or 2 weeks, we might have actually become incorporated in some respect, whether it was through fiscal sponsorship or a cooperative structure. But I can't answer that definitively right now because it's pending some additional information that we'll get this Friday.
Well, I'm concerned. Based on my conversation with Gottlieb Simon, he will disallow a grant that is made out to an individual. And if that happens, then the ANC is on the hook for that cost, and they're not going to get reimbursed by the district for it, which makes it difficult then for them to do the other things that they have to do with that money. So, and that's happened to us in the past where they have disallowed a grant like that. So, I mean, what are the other commissioners? Other commissioners have thoughts or comments about this?
Well, if another ANC already gave them a grant, much like it's being proposed that we give them a grant, and since a lot of rules are being relaxed during this time period, especially ones on grants, the kind of things that the money can go towards. I have no problem with awarding the grant because I think that it just won't be one other ANC that gave one of these networks a grant. I think several are going to, and you know, I think it's something that we can do to support the community in a time of need.
So Randy, I think this is a very worthwhile organization. I am in favor of giving them a grant, but I think we need to make sure with the Office of ANCs that they will accept I mean, we should get pre-approval that we can pay by personal check to Sarah, and before we give the grant, because I don't want to be where we were last time. That was a bad place where we had to pay the money ourselves and becoming the whole.
Okay, anyone else?
Yeah, I'll just say, I mean, if it's possible, but I agree with both Jerry and Chris. Yeah, you know, I mean, I certainly agree with Jerry, but I think Chris is right. I mean, this was very painful last time, and to be put in that position, I don't know. I'm really torn. It's like I want to give the money, but it sounds to me like we're just going to get slapped. And if that's the case, then how do we reconcile that? Or do we? I don't know.
I would also add, Randy, I do believe it's a great cause, but could we ask Gottlieb the question of this specific instance, since 3D has done that?
Yeah, he actually is aware of 3D's grant,
Mm-hmm.
and he had advised them, I don't know whether it was before or after the vote, that that was not acceptable, and that they couldn't approve that.
Well, I think the government needs to take some leadership on this and give us a specific ruling on this specific grant. I mean, they're all working from home. It should be able to be submitted and have the people who make that decision give us a decision in the next week or two, you know, so we can give the money out when it's needed.
Yeah, what I would suggest is that Sarah try to get some arrangement for an organization as quickly as possible. And certainly if that were done, I don't think there would be any question that we could approve the application and give the grant. I'm just concerned that right now there's a cloud hanging over it, and we need to try to get rid of that cloud. I can talk to Gottlieb Simon again, and I would like to get some assurances from him. And Becky, you're absolutely right that we ought to be able to get an assurance one way or the other. We've tried this in the past, and you know how Gottlieb is just very difficult to pin down on something like this. But based on what he told me on Sunday, he would not approve this if it were a check written to an individual. Jerry?
I just want to remind us the trouble we had last year with what seemed like a simple question, and we waited months to get an answer from that office. It's like they're fighting against us to do things, and I don't know if we ever got a resolution that we then also asked for them to give us procedures that we could use in the future, and those were never forthcoming.
Right.
So dealing with them has been nothing but hard in the past, and very little help in terms of them answering the questions that we want and giving us procedures that we could follow, that we don't have to wait months to do something when time is of the essence.
I agree with that, Jerry. The other thing is, I think this problem is not going to go away, and the need for this kind of assistance that's being proposed in the application is not going to go away. if we could do something within a couple of weeks, I think it would probably be safer from our standpoint. I will talk again with Gottlieb, but I'm not confident we will get a firm positive answer from him.
Well, maybe we need to go. Maybe we need to go around Gottlieb. Who was the one who disallowed it last time? I forgot.
It was OAG, wasn't it?
Yeah,
What?
but now it's Gottlieb.
It was Gottlieb
Well,
before.
Oh, but then we saw an opinion from the OAG?
Yeah.
No, we
Well,
never
the
had
auditor, it was Kathleen.
Oh, I see.
but we ended up with a workaround essentially, so that we did not have to get their approval. That was the grant that was going to Wilson High crew, as I recall.
yes, but I think, again, this is ridiculous that we go through this every time.
Yep.
That
Yep.
somebody needs to take, the leadership here, and it needs, if we have a question, get it pre-approved or whatever within a certain time frame.
Yeah, well, we testified at the oversight hearing before the council on this very issue. And we said it was just an intolerable situation. And we asked for some procedures, some specific procedures that we could follow and that we could get answers quickly. Of course, as Chris pointed out, that has not happened. So we've got to make do with the best we can. I don't want to be in the position where we get the grant disallowed. I would rather be able to try to get a workaround here so we can fix it and make sure that it's going to be approved.
Yeah.
Does the, oops, sorry.
Could I allow Peter Lynch to talk?
Yeah.
That presented it last time, okay.
Yes.
Great.
Okay, Peter, unmute yourself, you're good.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having both Sarah and I on tonight. What solution do you think Sarah could offer within the framework that the Ward 3 DC Mutual Aid is already in? Is there anything that he or I can do to help remedy this situation?
The only thing I think would be to have some formal organization that we can give the money to rather than an individual. I just think, I can understand from the district standpoint, they're being very careful about this. They're worried that ANCs are going to be giving money away to individuals for some other kinds of projects that may not be valid, or that the individual is not going to use the money as intended. So I think what they're interested in is you just have to have an organization that's going to be accountable for this.
Does that mean it has to be a 501c something?
No,
as a nonprofit?
no. I don't think it.
What's the definition of an organization?
I think what would satisfy Gottlieb is if that bank account were in the organization's name, so that we could write a check to the Ward 3 Mutual Aid and they could deposit that in that account. If we could write it would be that simple. What?
What does that organization need? I could make up a name of an organization easily and open a bank account.
Yep. I think that would satisfy Gottlieb based on my conversation with him on Sunday.
Mr. Speck, just lost my train of thought for just a second. Oh, yes. What would be the hurt of granting the application and then seeing if the process played out, and maybe Sarah in the meantime can change up the name of the bank account?
Yeah, that's what I would propose that we do. We go ahead and approve the grant application. I think everyone is in agreement that it is a worthwhile grant and that we ought to be giving the grant. It's just a question of working out the mechanics so that we can make sure that the grant is going to get approved. And so I would be perfectly happy with approving the grant now, pending some kind of arrangement that will satisfy the Office of ANC so that we can get their approval.
Sarah, do you think that's possible?
Well, yeah, so I'm sorry that that I don't have all the answers to these questions, because as a group we've been looking into this stuff. It is actually pretty complicated to get a bank account in an organization's name because you need to become an LLC and have a tax ID, and then everyone wants to get money from you, you know, whether it's PayPal taking fees or the bank taking fees. So these things are not easy on purpose because there's, you know, many financial institutions who have an interest in getting a piece of the pie. Which is why, you know, we've kind of been stuck in the place that we are, and even a progressive fiscal sponsor, we see them poised to take 5% in fees every month. So I was wondering, would you all allow us to partner with a church, for example, and they would take the money on our behalf, and then we would, you know, reimburse our volunteers directly from that amount of money that you all made as the grant. That's like one option that I thought of.
I think that would work.
Or another option would be, I know that DC Black Lives Matter, which is one of the founders of the network, has a bank account in their organization's name. And so I'm not quite sure how that would work, but they could potentially take the funds and then I don't know whether they would just transfer it to us or I wouldn't want to burden them with doing individual reimbursements for us because that would, you know, add work for them.
Yeah, I think it would be better if it were a church. Simply because, what do you say, Dan?
No, I was just saying, I think there may be a sub-organization or two within Blessed Sacrament that could do this. They have several nonprofits within their operation that they might work on this. That's just one idea. I'd be surprised if we couldn't figure something out.
Yeah, I think that's what we'll do. I will make a motion that we approve the grant pending working out arrangements to make the payment in a way that's going to be satisfactory for the office of the ANC and will meet all of those technical requirements. Is there a second for that motion?
I'll second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That's everyone, I think. Okay, 6-0 then. Okay, Sarah and Peter. Sarah, I'll work directly with you, but I'll work over the next 3 or 4 days and see if we can't find a way to do this in a fashion that's going to be acceptable to Gottlieb Simon. And I think we'll work it out.
Thank you all very much.
You're welcome, Peter.
Well, yeah, thank you all so much. And I also just wanted to say that, you know, this is very political for us because we haven't been able to access the city's funds, and we're doing the city's job. Even people reaching the emergency hotline who are sick with COVID haven't been able to get a delivery, and we've been the one to deliver to them. I had someone from DHS email me today asking about putting our hotline number on documents that she's sending to all of her caseload. 311 redirects to our hotline numbers. And I'm like an unemployed, you know, mother of a disabled kid who like has no income until January myself. And it's like, you know, this is a lot for a network of volunteers to take on. And I don't know why the city, you know, if they have so many rules, then, you know, why are they not meeting their own mandate, even within that very narrow mandate of their emergency hotline or, you know, these other services that they set out. And yeah, it's tough seeing like the ANC route, which is really kind of the most accessible local route for getting some kind of public funding, get mired in the same kind of technicality, you know. So I really appreciate you all for, you know, like, pulling for us and being so supportive.
We'll try to cut through all of that and see if we can't get this approved and do it this week if we can.
Randy?
Yes, Shanda.
Yes, I was wondering if they could give contact information for people who in the community who may be listening now who would like to either donate or volunteer their time to help. Could they do that before they?
Sure. Right now, if you cut Sarah off, but if Sarah's still there, yeah. Sarah, you want to do that? You want to give information about where people can make donations? You're muted, Sarah, if you're speaking.
Sorry
you go.
about that. Sorry, I have the habit of muting myself after I speak. I think I can put a link in the question and answer.
Okay.
Oops, wrong link. Sorry, that was the link. I had the link for the DC Greater DC Diaper Bank. Okay, so here's the link for a fundraiser, and then we also have a link for signing up to be a member. And I'll put that here as well. Right, so the first link is the GoFundMe fundraiser, and then the second link, the Airtable link, is for registering to be a member and get on our email list and get the info for our calls and all that kind of stuff.
Okay. All right. Anything else on this topic before we go to our next topic? Okay. The next topic is the discussion of the mission, organization, membership, and procedures for the ANC3 Task Force on Racism. And we established this task force at our last meeting. Specifically, we said we would create a representational working group within ANC3 tasked with identifying equity and justice issues within our community and proposing concrete solutions. Shanda, you want to discuss that, how we want to proceed with that tonight?
Okay. I think at least in our conversation in terms of how it would proceed would be a task force of residents of our ANC who are interested in the issue, and in terms of coming together to talk and come up with a mission for the group, perhaps discuss various issues. I know we had talked about the impact of healthcare in terms of COVID-19, the policing and justice issue, education, and the list I could go on, but these are just some examples of issues that potentially the task force could discuss. But we basically wanted to be a collaborative group of citizens who come together and basically challenge our community to think about and to talk about and perhaps even survey what are the top issues that are affecting our community and across the city, what we can actually do, and hopefully ultimately come up with a report. I know Randy, Chairman Speck, you and I had talked about having the group come up with a potential timetable for a report to present to the community and to the ANC so that we can decide on what action steps would be best for our ANC to tackle what may be a myriad of issues, but hopefully we can narrow them down to something where we can have concrete action and concrete results.
Okay, any other commissioners have thoughts about this?
Yes, I'd like to just add too. I think that's great. I would also like to say that I think the task force should also look at what is really realistic. Are we going to be doing superficial actions that might take years to get through Congress, you know, or whatever? Or is there something where we can form a group that we can come up with programs or actions that can be taken that will impact people who need, you know, people's lives that need help, or for us to handle these issues in a more immediate fashion? Like, I hate to say this, but renaming a street that, or a fountain or something that nobody knew what was named after, how does that impact someone's life in the near future? You know, that could take years. It was named by an act of Congress. So I'll take an act of Congress to rename it. I'd like to see us come up with some other ways, like mentorship or something that will help this racial divide in the more immediate future. I want to say also that this community has a lot of expertise in people who do this now, And I think we should rely on them heavily how to get these programs accomplished or begun and get the community active in them.
Jerry?
I agree. A task force is nice,
That's it.
but I think that we have to have actionable items that are solution oriented and not just a lot of talk. I think time for talk is sort of past. I think we need to really come forward and have things that people could grab onto and that are actionable.
Yes, I agree. I agree with both Commissioner Mallett and Madak on that. Actionable, concrete solutions.
Randy? You know,
Yes, Dan.
Yeah, and obviously, I mean, I agree with everybody. And I think as we've kind of learned in the past, we've had some really good success with the way we've done task force in the past. And just not, jumping on an individual, this, that, or whatever the case, like thinking through, truly looking for substantive type of mission-oriented goals that we're able, whether it's partnering with other ANCs or whether it's working on, justice reform, whatever the issue may be, that has a deep impact within the community itself. And I think as we sit here, I think we do need to come up with kind of a really good, as I think Shonda said, a really good mission. And we need to make sure that we kind of have the organization, like our comprehensive plan task force. It was a lot of work. A lot of time, but in the end, we came up with some serious substance, not just kind of a reactionary type of thing. And I think that's what we're all looking for. And maybe there's a couple of us that need to sit down and write that out, or maybe, I don't know if there are specific organizational chart, so to speak, if we want to just follow or look at the comp plan task force, or if we want to look at another one. But I think we need to make sure that that the mission and the organization of that is dealt with first before we get into, I think, a couple of the whole list, as Shonda said, the entire list that could be chosen of, unfortunately, of things that might have to be dealt with or discussed.
Does anyone have thoughts about how the leadership of this task force should be arranged? I mean, in the comp plan task force, for instance, it was the chair of the commission who led the comp plan. I'm not sure that's the right choice in this instance. I do think that we need a strong leader in that task force that can make sure we're focusing on substantive, concrete issues, actionable issues. And so we're going to need some leadership in that regard. Anyone have thoughts about that? No one stepping forward?
Well, I think we should kind of reach out to our constituents, because I've kind of looked at some people who have been making comments, and a lot of people already do this kind of work to some extent, yes, or work for a company or organization that does this, an NGO or some other philanthropic company. And I think I've talked to some people who are willing to do community service, and I think instead of reinventing the wheel, it would give us a heads up because they know what the process would take.
Yes, I agree with that. Sorry, Becky. Sorry.
No, that's okay. I keep pressing the non-speaker thing, and then I get screwed up. Yeah.
Go ahead, Shanda.
I was going to I know in some of our past task force or working groups, as opposed to choosing the leader beforehand, once the group comes together and is able to identify, as Becky said, say someone who may have an expertise in this area, or if not, just you know, we're delving into like a number of issues, and just like the comprehensive plan task force, I, for one, want to make sure that we do a great job in like identifying the issues and moving forward. So I would suggest, at least initially, that people who are interested in the task force in the community within our ANC come together and have our initial meeting. I don't know what everyone else thinks about that.
Chanda, do you want to run it?
Well, initially, perhaps I could convene the initial meeting, and then once the group of community members or individuals come forward who express interest, because I'm sure there, or hopefully are a lot of people who, even if they can't come in person, will at least submit their comments to the task force. So yes, I would be willing to start it off, but my hope is that we could, as Becky mentioned, open it up and there's someone within the community, some individual or individuals.
Yeah, that's, sorry. I think there probably will be a couple of people. I mean, there are a couple of people in my district I know who I think will be interested. And I don't know how many issues this is going to end up being. And if people go out and want to do a subgroup, some of the stuff is pretty sticky, deep material. So, we will need some strong leadership, and undoubtedly we'll all be involved. My only thought is that we probably, and Randy, Chandra, if you want to work, I'll be happy to help out. But maybe, if nothing else, I think we do need a mission or a mission statement and some kind of at least basic thoughts on how to bring, of how we need to at least kind of set up the first meeting.
Yes.
I wouldn't want to just, I mean, a lot of us could get in a room and talk about a bunch of stuff and it not going to,
No, I agree.
So how about this? Dan and Shanda and I can work on a mission statement. I think we should go ahead and set up a time for that first meeting. And we need to strike, for me, we need to strike while the iron is hot, while people are still very motivated and interested right now. And then have that first meeting. And Shanda, I think it would be great if you could at least chair that first meeting. And then, and then we'll see who comes forward to lead this group. Jerry?
I was going to say that Alan Beach wanted to be recognized, but I see that he's since dropped that request. Alan, if you still want to talk.
Yep, he still wants to talk.
Okay, there he is. Okay, unmute yourself and you're good to go.
Alan, you there?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
I should recommend you try to get Peter Shapiro, a former commissioner who's worked around the city, PG County, and other places. He probably had experience in this area.
Now, Peter is no longer in our ANC either. He's in a completely different area of the city now. So he may not
grab
be.
him if I could.
Pardon?
I'd still grab him if I could.
Okay. Well, I think we should look for whoever will take a really strong lead. I would hope it would be somebody from our ANC, though, who can appreciate
I agree with that.
The issues that are paramount here. I mean, one of the issues that I hope the task force will address, and we've already got a lot of work on it, is the affordable housing issue, which we addressed extensively in our comp plan. But if we could make that a reality, we can make affordable housing in our neighborhood a reality, that would be a big difference, I think. But we need to, I think, get it started relatively quickly. I would hope like the beginning of July, we could have that first meeting, and it'll be a virtual meeting, so we can have it so everybody can attend. How does that sound? And then the other thing, I think, if we're talking about a mission statement and organization and that kind of thing, I think we ought to have some idea in mind on when we would like to have a report from the task force, whether it's an interim report or a final report, but we would like to get, I think we ought to get some feedback to the commission, like early fall, so that we can really push this forward so that it's going to have some impact. How does that sound?
Okay, do we have any other comments from the community, or?
Yes.
Well, there was one, I think, I know Lisa Oakley wanted to talk about the Newlands Fountain. And this might be an appropriate time to address that if she wants to. If you want to let her be unmuted, Jerry?
No, I was talking about anybody else about how to form the task force specifically. Nobody? Okay, I guess I'm not.
Okay, Lisa, you want to unmute yourself? We still can't hear you. You're muted.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
No? Okay, you can hear me? Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Well, I know that the issue of the fountain is one that has like a history with the ANC, and I understand that the task force that you're forming really wants to take on big issues, and I don't want the momentum of the moment. I want to take the momentum of the moment. There's a lot of people who want to really push forward on the removal of the fountain again and its renaming. And I do think that, you know, it may be a little known name or a little known fountain, but you know what? I really do feel that symbols and names matter. And I feel that we can do both two things at once. We can, you know, put something there that provides some education for people around what really took place, what's happened in Chevy Chase and how it was formed and the history of it. And at the same time, take on issues of, you know, affordable housing and all the big issues. So I would love to be part of, I don't know if our group who wants to work on the fountain issue is part of a task force or if it's something separate. But I do want to share that we've had a meeting with the Park Service again today, and I spoke with Julie Washburn, and they want to move forward with the process. It is sort of an ominous process, as you say, with, you know, legislation and all that. But I think that there is momentum again. So, but I don't want to take up too much time with the details of what we talked about, but I'd love to maybe fold this effort into the task force if that's something that people want to do. And I'm open to hearing, you know, if you're receptive to that.
Well, I would certainly think that the whole issue of naming streets, or, I mean, there's a Newlands Street, there's a Newlands Park. There's also Woodrow Wilson High School. That I know there's a lot of impetus now to change that name. I would like to see the task force address those issues, but as part of a more comprehensive analysis of the issues. And, you know, that could come as a recommendation from the task force early on, if that's what the task force concludes. I also saw this week that last week that the Chevy Chase Land Company has also said that it's time to change the name of that fountain, and that they are no longer opposed to that, which is another big step. So, you know, if that's what the task force wants to do, I think there's a consensus. I suspect there's a consensus on the commission that certainly we would like to contribute to that process. But I'd like that come organically from the task force. And so I would defer to the task force to maybe address that as an initial issue, or one of the initial issues, to see if there's a strong feeling about it. But and I certainly think it is a time that's ripe to do it now, because there are a lot of people who are focused on these kinds of issues. Any other comments from other commissioners? Or Lisa, you want to comment on that?
No, I think that would be great. I'm happy to be part of the task force. And the other thing I did want to share is, in the meeting today with the Park Service, they very much did think that it would be helpful to have a resolution that was passed by the ANC as part of the process to move forward. And there's still some question about whether legislation is needed to actually remove the plaque and the inscription. Certainly to rename it, there would have to be a resolution, legislation in place, but they're still trying to figure out, there's very nuanced, there are a lot of nuanced challenges in doing it. So I'm going to learn more this week about what they come back to me with, and I'll know more about how we proceed with it. But I'm happy to bring this, I'm happy to be part of the task force and also, work on the broader issue of names and issues like around Woodrow Wilson High School. That's something else that I've been involved in as well.
Okay, how does that sound for the other commissioners? Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Well, Dan and Shannon and I will get together and talk about mission organization and for this first meeting, and see if we can't get that rolling, and then get something out to the community to let everybody know that we're having the meeting, and invite everyone to participate, and see if we can't get a real groundswell of support in the community of people who are interested in doing something substantive. Okay, anything else on that issue? Okay, the last issue is a discussion of possible transportation issues for reopening the schools in the fall, including the possible designation of slow streets. And Jerry, you want to begin that discussion?
Sure. And those that are on video, excuse me while I look at my other computer while I'm looking at the camera here for some of my notes. So over the last couple of weeks, as one school year ended and another one is, people are starting to talk about the possibility of how school's going to open up for the 2021 school year. A few people have gotten in touch with me about an issue that really hasn't been talked about as much, and that's transportation. How are kids going to get to school? There's been a lot of talk about what type of instruction, whether split schedule, days of the week, some kids go in and not, online, but there's been little talk about transportation issues. So this was brought to my attention by a few people. I followed up with certain people, and I see two of them are online. I won't call them out just yet, but we contacted people from HSAs, from the neighboring schools, from the superintendent's office, from DCPS, and others as well, just to get their take on what might or might not be happening. And I just want to mention some of the methods that brought to my attention. One is walking. Not much of a problem. If kids walk to school, there shouldn't be much of a problem. Another one is parents driving them to school, or parents or a caretaker driving them to school. Also not a problem. Then we start getting into some issues. Carpool, a potential problem, as it will be tough for some to feel comfortable in a social distancing environment unless they've been, families are cocooning sort of with one another if it's one family that's taking charge. The big problem is with buses, and how social distancing going to be handled with a bus. If It can only hold, say, half the kids at one time because of social distancing on a bus. How are schools going to open at the same time? How many more buses need to be in operation? And things that I haven't read anything about, but it's a big problem in terms of schools providing transportation and limited capacity for the buses. Another one is vehicles for hire. Where are they going to let kids off? What kind of safety precautions do they need for kids? And I'm sure there are others, but the other big one that was brought to my attention is bikes. More kids might want to bike to school. And with the introduction recently of slow streets in DC, there's also the possibility of, some kind of accommodation for more kids on bikes. So these are all different methodologies that people would be using to get to school. And while people are talking about, like I said, instruction, little or no talk about transportation issues, how people are going to get to school. So I know that people have brought this to the attention of different council members' offices, and there's been discussion about it, and whether it's a slow street near some of these schools. I would guess primarily Deal and Wilson, although there might be a lot of kids who like to school at Lafayette. I don't know that for a fact. I know more kids do to Deal and to Wilson. So these are various issues. Almost all of the offices that I contacted, they said they'll be thinking about this, as school year comes up, but school year is 9 weeks away. So there's not a lot of lead time here. It's much better to be proactive than reactive in a situation like this, so to get our best ideas out there, the best ideas of the community to help inform the decision-making by those groups that are responsible for these things. So it's just a discussion I wanted to get started. Like I said, I know there are a couple of people online that might have something to contribute, but first I'd like to hear what we all think about this.
Commissioners, any thoughts? Anyone want to follow up with Jerry? I would just note that Dee Smith advised me ahead of the meeting with her announcements from Councilmember Che's office that Councilmember Che is working with DDOT on this very issue, and specifically looking at the possibility of slow streets, whatever that means, around Deal. And also talking with the Ward 3 bikes, I think, to see if they're, what their ideas are on this as well. So I know the council member is involved in it.
Right, that is one of, Member Che's office was one of the offices that I spoke with, and I did get some ideas from them. I didn't want to mention them because I didn't know that they had been in touch with you, so you could mention them because you got much more recent information than I did. So that's excellent news. And that,
Oh, I'd just like to add to thank you for presenting that, because it is great to look at alternative options such as biking, and not only does it have health benefits, it helps everyone, but just looking at alternative ways so that everyone can become mobile again. So thank you for presenting that.
that's well, thank the people that got in touch with me first.
Jerry, is there anything that we need to do now about this, or is there something specific that we can do to move this process along?
Well, I think we could formally write something up that recognizes this problem and, try to encourage the powers that be that are involved in this. And there are many different offices or agencies because we're dealing with multiple means of transportation. So, you know, it could include more kids walking to school, safety on the roads. It could include the buses, more kids biking, another example of safety on the roads. If more kids are being driven to school, schools need to think about drop-off procedures so they don't have so many kids mingling, you know, together if they're trying to do some sort of social distancing. So I think it's more presenting what possible problems are. I don't know that we as a group have solutions to it, but I know that people, such as the offices that I mentioned, they're the ones that are going to have to come up with these solutions. And they think about it better.
Would it be the Department of Transportation that should be sort of taking the lead on this, since a lot of this involves, almost all of it involves transportation of some sort? Now they're going to have to interact with other agencies as well, but certainly the approval of any slow streets, for instance, that's a DDOT responsibility. Any additional bike lanes would be a DDOT responsibility. Making crossings safe for walking, school kids walking to school, that's going to be a DDOT responsibility. So there are a lot of things that I think hone in on DDOT, and maybe what we need is a letter to Jeff Marushian, just alerting him to those issues, and maybe copy a lot of other people as well.
Well, you probably know better than I. You know, in Ward 3, there aren't any charter schools, so we don't have to really worry about charter schools. But we do have the 3 most populated schools of their kind in all of the city, with Lafayette, Deal, and Wilson. So the buses that take kids to their official school buses, that's not a DDOT activity. Right. But you know, there's certainly going to be issues in terms of that. So I don't think it's just DDOT. I think it's people responsible for school buses. And I think the associations in the schools themselves, they probably are thinking about this and have some ideas about drop-off points and things like that. So I think it's a multi-pronged approach that we should be taking.
Okay, is there anyone else that's any attendees who wants to talk about this? I see Alan's periodically raising his hand and dropping it again. Jerry, you're muted.
Okay, Josh, you're good.
Great, thanks so much. Hi everyone, this is Josh Rising. I live here near in the ANC3 4G, and thanks. I know I've worked with a number of you on a bunch of issues over the years. No, I just really appreciate kind of the attention. You know, clearly no one solution is going to work, but you really need to have a comprehensive plan for how to make sure it's going to be easier for kids to get to school, because I do certainly worry that people are going to be reluctant to take buses. I and others, I am sure, have seen packed buses, Deal and Wilson. Certainly, I know that there's been a huge upswing in biking over the past few months. We all know that sales are off the charts. So it's nice if all this extra biking that kids are doing over the course of the summer and spring, we're able to translate into being able to bike to school. And we certainly know that DC is interested in slow streets and trying to figure out how to make things like that more possible. My son Emerson, who's a Deal student, had just a couple of things he wanted to add.
Well, yeah, so I go to Deal, and I just find it sometimes very hard to bike to Deal. And so I would like it if the ANC would take some measures in order to make it easier for kids in this neighborhood to bike to Deal and Wilson.
Yeah. And so I agree with Sharon that, you know, it's just 9 weeks till school is, knock on wood, starting again. So it's not a lot of time. So I think we need to light a fire under DDOT and others. Great that Mary Che's so interested, and more letters like this hopefully will spur DDOT to try to move quickly on this. Right, and I think, you know, it doesn't need to be permanent solutions. Just trying things on a pilot basis can make sense, because we also know facts on the ground are going to keep changing as time goes on over the course of the next 6+ months.
Okay, thank you, Josh. All right, is there a consensus in the commission, among the commissioners, that we should send a letter, maybe one letter addressed to a number of different people to at least alert them to our concerns about this issue?
Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
I agree, it's a great idea.
Okay, Jerry, why don't you and I work on a letter that we'll circulate to the other commissioners, and we'll circulate something that we can send out this week.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Finally, this is something that came up just recently, but Councilmember Che is supporting, and this is in connection with the budget, as I understand it, supporting designation for a commercial district, for our commercial district to be a main street. This is a term of art in the district, and it entitles it to some additional funding and those kinds of things. And I understand that she's pushing to have some money put into the fiscal year 2021 budget for our area to be a main street. There are several other main streets along Connecticut Avenue, Van Ness and Cleveland Park and Woodley Park. So it would make sense for our commercial district to be a main street as well. And they've suggested that it would be helpful if we could write a letter of support to the council, and this would assist them, I think, in getting money for this project. And I sent the draft letter around to the commissioners. Any comments or questions or suggestions about that draft letter? Shall we go ahead and send it then? Is that okay? Good. All right. Okay. All right. That concludes all the substantive parts of the meeting. We need to approve our minutes from the June 8th meeting, which were posted on the various listservs. Any modifications or changes to those minutes by anyone? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, 6-0. We also have one check. We finally got our checkbook out of the community center, and so we're able to write checks now. The only check that we need to approve for this meeting is a check to Verizon for $302.45, and this is 2 months of phone service and internet service. All those in favor of approving that check, say aye. Raise your hand.
Aye.
Okay, 6-0. Okay, for our next meeting, I've been asked by, Chris and I are on this advisory group for DDOT on the Connecticut Avenue reversible lane and operational study. And DDOT has asked to make a presentation at one of our meetings in July about where they stand on that project. I think it's going to be more just a description of what the project is and timelines for when they're going to be producing various products and having meetings with the community. So they would like to have a presentation at one of our meetings, and probably, at least right now, that looks like it could be our meeting on, I believe it's July 14th. Is our next meeting date. That's the only thing I have right now. Anybody else have anything else for our next meeting?
No.
Okay. With that, I think we can adjourn. Anybody else have anything? All right, we're adjourned then. Thank you very much. Thanks everyone for attending.
Thank you.
Thank you.